right. We are getting ready to do the Clifftop Links tournament. It's firing up tomorrow, and I will be doing a practice rounds tomorrow. I encourage everybody to use Monday as a practice round. That way you can get some experience out on the holes. It does cost you a little bit if we're using better than just a marlin or a white ball. You're going to have to expend a little bit to practice. But going out, the problem is that you hit these holes and you're playing in one-on-one, and you're using just the normal stuff. You're using a white ball, marlin, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a 1-power ball. And then you get in the weekend round and you start changing things up. It's different when you play some of these holes with a 2-power or a 3-power ball, or if you got a ball that has more side spin. So you were playing it with a marlin and you upgraded to a quasar, and now you have 3 side spin instead of 1, and it changes your shot setup. So you shoot the same thing and you're like, wow, now I ended up over in the rough over here. Like, what's the deal? It was a perfect shot. Well, you have to practice with that equipment. So if you're using better equipment, you need to practice with it. So first thing I do when I'm doing the week, and unfortunately, the South Coast tournament, which has all the White Cliff holes that are in this, I found my notes for that, so I was able to write my notes down. But the other holes that are in here from the Hamey Cliffs, I could not find my sheet from. It's been in those holes have been in 2 tournaments, the Creepy Cliffs and the Club Oceana, and I could not find my notes for either one of those tournaments. And I really wanted to find the ones for Club Oceana because I finished 3rd in that tournament and 2nd in the South Coast, so those notes are really good. So here's where I have, let me get to my screen here. This is what I have is just like my basic beginning of the week notes. So this is my beginning practice notes. And I like to, some of the percentages that are on there, I watch Tommy's videos and I go through and I don't. Some of the shots, because they're really focused on expert and masters, some of the shots that they do are like they'll come out with regular balls, or the areas that they're hitting in, sometimes these win percentages are correct, but I'm hitting to a different area, so those win percentages aren't correct. So some of these win percentages are mine, and some of them are ones that I got from Tommy, but I'm not going to use those in the tournament. I'm going to practice them in the practice round and see what I like, because I'm going to, I want to make adjustments based on what I'm shooting. And so there's my basic going into the tournament notes. So you know how it doesn't have to be complicated. You can put these on a computer, you can do something, but something that you can have when you're there, a cheat sheet. I highly recommend that if you're new, especially if you've got more than one account and they've got separate, different level clubs, that you write down all of your club numbers. So I used to make 2 sheets. I had one for my 77 account and one for my odd account, and I played an expert masters in odd, and I played Ricky in 77. And so I literally had to have 2 different cheat sheets because it was too hard to try and keep track of that stuff in my mind. And even now where I've got a practice account which has similar clubs, some of the clubs aren't quite as high a level, so I have separate numbers for those, and I have to write those down. Otherwise I get them confused, and then, it's not good either way. So just talking about what I've got here. So this hole right here, I'm going to come at it with a big topper and a kingmaker. And I apologize, here's the deal. When you go out and you play one-on-one, you can use whatever you've got, or whatever, marlins. Like I said, I play almost exclusively day-to-day with marlins. I like that little bit of side spin that you get with a marlin, and that side spin is really, really key on a lot of holes where with the white ball, that one side spin, it makes a huge difference. So day-to-day, I play a lot with a marlin, but when it comes tournament time, I save all my good stuff for tournaments, because in the tournament, it's not about coming out here and trying to beat an opponent. It's about coming out here and trying to pick up shots. And the first step to picking up any shot is to be consistent on your drives. It's not going to do you any good. I mean, can you make it if you end up out here or in the sand? Can you get in the cup? Absolutely. But are your chances better here or better here? They've got to be better here. So the whole thing is that we want to work shots so that we're consistently in the same spot. That's goal number 1 when you're playing in these tournaments. I've got some teammates that are, they're doing great in the qualifying rounds, and they're getting to the opening round and they're not making the weekend. And they're capable of making the weekend. I'm seeing it in their qualifying scores, and and they can easily get in there, and I'm not sure if they're just trying too hard, but the goal is to just play consistent. Don't worry about coming to a hole like this. This hole number 1 in this tournament, is a great opportunity to pick up an eagle down here. But your first and foremost goal is to make sure that you get a birdie. Okay? And the way you do that is you put yourself in the right spot. You put yourself in the right spot down here, you almost have a guaranteed birdie. If you can put yourself down here, and you put yourself down here, and you put yourself down here every time you come to this hole, you're going to start getting some eagles on this hole because you're in the right spot. You're taking this shot. You remember from the last time you were here, hey, the last time I was here, and this is what I did. The last time I was here, and I did this. And the last time I was here, and doing this. Instead of going, I was here, and 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 I was over here, and I was there, and I was in the sand, and I was in the rough, and I was all over the place. And I don't want to have this kind of target where every single one of these shots is a different shot, a different setup to the green. I want to do the same shot over and over and over and over and over and over, so that my next shot is the same shot over and over and over, and I can really start to dial that shot in. So if you're new and you're just starting to play tournaments, or if you're experienced and you were up at the top and then you decided, hey, I don't have the time to play that, I want to just go out and have fun, and I want to play rookie tournaments. The deal is consistency is the key to this game. And so being in the same spot over and over and over, so you can practice that next shot over and over, is really important. I encourage my teammates all the time, just play consistent, play fairway to green, fairway to green, fairway to green. And guess what? If you do that enough, you're going to eventually start getting these eagles to drop, and those albatrosses to drop, and those hole-in-ones to drop. Excuse me. So on this hole right here, my notes say, big topper, kingmaker. We're going to have to bring out the big stuff in a tournament. That's the whole deal. Okay? If you want to play with a marlin ball, then you know what that's like, because you play these holes in one-on-one with a marlin ball, then great. But in tournament time, if you're really trying to work your way up the bracket, you can help yourself out by bringing out bigger balls. We can't do anything about our clubs. We're going to eventually max out the clubs that we're looking for, and we're going to build our clubs up, and that's just going to happen over time. But what we can do to enhance our clubs in the meantime is by bringing out a bigger ball, bringing out the ball that's got the right side spin. Here I'm bringing out a kingmaker for several reasons. The kingmaker is it's a 3-power ball. We're going to have to make a wind adjustment. We're probably going to have some kind of forward moving wind, and so the kingmaker is going to help me knock that wind down, so I don't have to make as big of an adjustment here. And it is downhill, so there is going to be, you want to be real careful. I don't hardly, when they talk about on a drive shot, there's a 10% wind adjustment. If you're playing an expert where you may have, excuse me again, you may have, a 12, 14 mile an hour wind here. 10% on a 15 mile an hour wind is 1.5 miles per hour. So if you got your extra mile, that's 3/4 of a ring. So a 10% adjustment could be a big deal if you're in really high wind. One of the things that I do in setup shots, and I don't usually add on my drive shots, is because when I set up shots, here's the transition between the fairway and the rough. I'm always 2 rings. I very seldom ever am within 2 rings, and if I have curl on that shot, I'd like to be even more than 2 rings. The more the merrier, because you need to give yourself enough room. Like if you were trying to curl it this way, you need to give yourself enough room to the left in order for the curl to engage. So making sure that when you set this shot up down here, that you give yourself a little bit of room between this transition. So don't scoot yourself right up against it. Now your ball guide in most cases is going to be, if you look at the tee box, and this is one of the things that cracks me up about holes like this. Here's the tee box, and here's where we want to get. Okay, so we'll draw that line. Okay, but you've got to engage the fairway. Your red line's with a 3-power ball is going to be somewhere out in this neighborhood, so you're going to be over here. So the line's going like this, and you've got to cover this gap. So when you set your ball up, your ball guide, you're here and you're 2 rings off, and your ball guide's going to be going out here in the sand. What you're looking for is that second bounce, so you can spin the screen sideways so that you can look at the ball guide at this angle. and you can see where that second bounce is, and that second bounce is going to be like out in this area. So what we're going to have to do is apply curl in order to get it to go over there. And I see a lot of people set the shot up and then they do like quarter curl or half curl. This is a max curl shot. Now if you bring an Apocalypse here, it has so much curl that you may over curl it and end up over here, so you'll have to adjust that for your ball. But one of the things that you can do with an Apocalypse that's hard to do with an Extra Mile is that you can be 3 rings off so that that curl will apply, and that'll give you a little bit more breathing room on this side. You can do this with any of your big drivers. I get over this hole right here, you can get over with an Extra Mile and a Quasar, a Katana. So you can get over here, but the goal, dang it, hold on one second. Sorry about that. I think I was about to choke to death. Forgot where I was at. So when you're here, any of your drivers will work, but I'm going to bring a Kingmaker so that number one, I can use less wind, make less wind adjustment down here. And number two, it has 3 curl, or 3 side spin, excuse me. So it's going to help me get over here. And when I'm making the shot to the cup and trying to pick up that eagle, it's going to cut the wind down on that shot. So it's going to make that shot a little bit easier. What I have found on this is with my big dog, or excuse me, my big topper, I'm getting so far out here that I'm right on the transition between my wedge and my short iron. And sometimes I hit that where I'm so deep in the hole, it's great because I'm fully in my wedge. And sometimes I'm out here where the transitional line where I actually have to, normally when I shoot my wedge at max club, I like to get it close enough that I can engage about 1 backspin. And I'm getting into a spot out here where I'm actually having to put on a little bit of topspin to bring it to the hole. It's super important to be pin high or a little bit to the left. You do not want to be to the right on this hole, because in anything where all this little pixelation is right here, all this pixelation that's on the green right here, and the cup is right here, if you end up to the right, or if you're coming at it from this angle right here and you don't get on top of that hill, it'll just roll back down the hill and you'll end up in the sand. It's really bad. So if you look out here, it's really important when you're shooting the shot that you don't want to come at it from any angle like this. I mean, you don't want to be in this angle range, because that means that when you're doing your drive to the hole, you're actually having to engage the hill in order to get to the cup. If you draw a line from the cup and come out, you want to be somewhere on this side of the line over here so that you're coming at it on the other side of the hill, so you can keep that hill out. You'll still may have to engage a little bit of it here in order to get on, but you're getting rid of a lot of the risk of rolling down the hill. If you have lesser developed clubs and you're doing this shot out here, this is a long iron, and you're going to want to bring just the most accurate long iron that you can get. Even if you bring a big ball out here, a lot, you know, you're seeing shots demoed where they're on this line right here and you're ending up in this area. This is a great shot for you to come out into here and use curl to try and bring it further down into this gap, but you're still not going to achieve anything much further than being like right out in this area. So this is definitely going to be a long iron shot out here, whereas if you can get anywhere in here, you're in short iron, and if you can get up to this mouth, you could eke yourself into wedge range. So getting into wedge range is definitely key. On my notes, I put, I've got my Hornet numbers. So my Hornet is the club I'm going to use. I'm hoping that I'm in my minimum Hornet range, which is 2.2 per ring for me. And I put a note on my, when we played this in the South Coast, that I'm gonna start a half a cup to the left. So when I'm coming at the green, when I'm taking this shot right here, coming at the green, if the cup is here, here's the cup, and here's the flagpole coming out, I'm gonna start a half a cup. Here's a half a cup from the flagpole to the edge of the cup. I'm gonna start a half a cup to the left. There's like a little irregular bounce. It's either an irregular bounce or it's a wind thing, but I have found that I need to be a little bit off the cup so that when it makes the bounce, that irregular bounce, it'll end up in the hole. In the last tournament, I did fairly well on this hole. If I could have picked it up one more time, I did pick it up once in the weekend round. If I could have picked it up one more time, man, it was this hole right here. You do have a shot. And starting the tournament off with a par 4 that has a shot like that, it's really key to try and get this in the hole. All right, that was hole number 1. Hole number 2. All right, on this hole right here, this hole, there is a big wind adjustment that needs to be made on this hole, because everything wants to come, everything wants to go. If you just make a regular wind adjustment, you're going to almost always end up to the right of the hole. Now there is a shot that you can do from out here where you're bouncing it up, but there's a hillside right here, right in this area right here. There's a hill, and so if you're coming from this way, right from this direction where you're bouncing over the sand, or if you're starting off over here and trying to come straight at it, you're going to have to engage this hill, and it's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be irregular. And sometimes, you know, you may get this hole in one-on-one where you have to do this shot because you didn't have a club that had any backspin. But I would try and avoid this shot in the tournament. I'm not a big fan, if you watch my videos, I'm not a big fan of doing anything that engages a trap on a par 3. So if I draw a line here, I want to be somewhere in front of that line. Okay, this is almost a guaranteed birdie if you're in front of that line. So I'm going to start off over here and bring the ball back to the hole. Now what I'm looking for out here, and what I'll be looking for in Monday's practice round, is I'll probably bring my sniper. I have a high enough level sniper that it's got its backspin. So I'm going to start off over here on this side. It's very accurate, so it'll be easy to make wind adjustments. I've been working the numbers. I did a 10%, then I jumped to a 40%, and I'm still working the numbers, and it's probably going to be somewhere between 20 and 30% for the wind adjustment to try and get that to stop at the hole. But I'm going to find a spot out here where I've got like my white ring rubbed up against the transition between the rough and the fairway. I'm going to find a spot so that every single time I come to this hole, I can put my ball in that spot, I can put my guide in that spot, and then make my adjustments from that point on. The par 3s, I don't like to work too hard on the par 3s. I work on them as the week goes on, and I try and dial it in and dial it in and dial it in so that I start peaking on the weekend round. I don't like to burn. If you think about how often we get hole-in-ones, I don't like to burn those hole-in-ones in the qualifying and the opening round. So I'm not too upset in those rounds when I don't get hole-in-ones, because I'm trying to work that shot to try and dial it in towards the weekend round. And I'm usually, you know, if you think about how often you get hole-in-ones, I get hole-in-ones enough that I definitely want to peak on the weekend round. That's why I don't play shootouts during tournaments, is because I don't want to waste any, because you're setting it up the same way and you're doing the thing and then you get a hole-in-one. Well, if you get a hole-in-one every, let's say, 40 games, well, there's, you know, that's you just lost one, because there's only 45 holes in the tournament. So you may not get a hole-in-one for that whole tournament. So I don't like to waste those hole-in-ones. But I will be coming at this with a sniper, and I'm going to start off with, you know, the deal here is that we need, side spin's important here. And so I have in my notes that I wrote down a 1 power ball, or excuse me, a 0 power ball, a Marlin. But this is probably better served to bring something that's got some side spin to it. And I'll be working on ball this week on this hole. So I may bring a Quasar or a Katana, and I may end up bringing a little bit bigger ball also for red line. So I'm a real big fan of working the ball to the red line. So if your red line's here with a Marlin and you're taking a minimum club number, if your red line's here with a Marlin, you can bring a bigger ball and you can scoot that towards that area. So, you know, you may have, here's the maximum club and here's the minimum club with a Marlin, and so you're somewhere around mid, or you're in between mid and max, or in between mid min. And so if you bring a bigger ball, you can scoot this minimum red line up, and if I can get my minimum red line to be right at that spot, then that means I'm in the most accurate part of my club. And even though I had to bring a bigger ball to do it, and I think that this is definitely going to be one of those holes where we're going to want a ball that's got some kind of side spin. So like we're going to be in the Quasar, Katana, Kingmaker series, depending on what ball we do. If you have balls, this is a prime example here. If you have balls in your inventory, let's say like a Santa. So you started off the week with a Marlin, and a Marlin's got 1 side spin. And then in the weekend round, you go, hey, I'm going to switch this up and I'm going to go to a Santa, because it's got 0 power and it's got 5 wind instead of 1 wind. Well, the deal is that a Santa's got 3 side spin. So unless you knew what this, you know, like you know that this is 2.5 side spin or 2.4 or whatever it is, and then you get in the weekend round, now you have a whole bunch of side spin at your disposal, and it can throw your shot off. So if your thought process is that, hey, as the weekend comes along, I'm going to switch to a different ball, try and find a ball in your inventory that matches up with the ball, the normal ball that you've been using. So if you were using a katana, let's say, where it's a 3 side spin, 2 power ball, then what you want to find is a low wind ball that has those same characteristics, so that it replaces it completely. The only difference is that the wind is lower. You don't want to use a ball. It's like playing a hole with a Titan all week, and then you play the weekend round with a Kingmaker because you're going to knock the wind down. Well, that Kingmaker's got 3 side spins, so that can throw your shot off, because now you engage all the side spin like you've been doing, and then all of a sudden your ball's over here in the rough. So if you're picking a lower wind ball for the weekend round, and usually I only play those on the weekend round because that's where I'm really trying to tighten it up, make sure that you play a ball that matches up with what you've been using during the week. Or pick one of those low wind balls that you want if you've got a big enough inventory, and just and play every time with it so that you can really practice with it. That's one of the cool things about the low wind balls, is that you can change them on the weekend round as long as you're changing them and they have the same stats. All right, hole number 3. Hole number 3. Let's see what we got for hole number 3 here. All right, hole number 3. So I want everyone to repeat after me very slowly. Are you ready? Don't worry about albatross on this hole. This hole is hard enough to eagle without worrying about albatross. Are we trying to give ourselves at least a shot at albie? Yes, that's our goal, because we're trying to get on and get an eagle. But this is a very dangerous hole that is going to eat a lot of people's lunch, and it's super important that we play to get an eagle here. We want to make sure we secure our eagle and go home, and if we get super lucky, jump up and down, because there's going to be a ton of people who are going to end up with birdie or par on this hole, and there's going to be just a handful of people that are going to end up with albatross. In a bracket of 100, there may be 1 or 2 people that got an albatross on this hole at some point in a round, whereas how many people got a birdie or a par, that's going to be a pretty good number. So playing consistent on this hole and securing your eagle is the most important thing. So it all starts with the drive. And you can see there's a little depression in the course right here. You want to be in front of that depression. You want to be up here. If you can get up by the shadow, that's the best. And you can do this shot with any of your drivers. You'll be able to do this with any of your drivers. My goal here is to hit this with a QB, a Titan, and a big dog. So my goal with the QB, and the reason I'm bringing a QB is because where our red line is when we're down here, we're in this narrow part of the fairway here. And I want to give myself the best opportunity for it to be able to run all the way to the tip. So if you're using an extra mile and you hit it, let's say, great to the right or great to the left, you're going to probably be okay here in most cases. And when you set this shot up here, you're going to have to, the ball guide's going to be, because of the way the course rolls, you're going to be kind of looking out in this direction. So you'll have to apply a little bit of curl just to bring it back to the fairway. We're not engaging a lot. You're not having to, it's just a little bit. But you want to put a little bit of left-hand curl on it in order to engage it back into the center of the fairway, so when it runs up, it ends up out here in the middle, as opposed to dribbling off and falling off. There is a hillside here, so it can fall off pretty easy. If you're using an extra mile and you're in this spot and you hit it great to the left or the right, you could easily end up in the rough out in these areas. So when you set the shot up, make sure that you set the center of your bullseye. I'm going to set it up in the very center of this fairway and give myself the most amount of room that I can on both sides. So if I hit it great to the left or the right, I'm still going to end up with this shot fine. If you're using an extra mile, you may get this shot, but you may mess it up on the other end. Whereas if you're using a QB, a great will end up here and here instead of ending up out here and out here with an extra mile. So you have a much better chance of still being in the fairway down here if you hit it great to the left or the right. The deal is establishing what kind of top spin, and that's this, when I talk about practicing on Monday, what I'm looking for on Monday on this hole, my goal number 1 is how much top spin can I engage and not roll off the front. I would rather be short in front of this hillside here and short up here than in the rough right here. Because if you're in the rough right there, you're done. You're toast. So it's really important. Hold on. Let me get out of that and get back on there. So it's really important to end up here on this upper plateau. Closer to the shadows, the better. Now, bringing a big ball here. I will definitely be bringing a Titan. So if we are having distance problems, not so much on the first shot. If we are having distance problems on the second shot, typically on this hole, we're going to get some kind of a forward moving wind. We're not going to be hitting into a headwind here. So if we do have some type of tailwind, even if it's a side wind like this, if we've got any kind of forward moving wind and we bring a Titan, we can still utilize that wind to help us out pick up some distance, especially if we have a pretty close to pure tailwind. We can utilize that wind to get us over. Now, you're not going to be able to bounce over from here to get over. You're not, that's not a shot. So if you want to get an eagle, if you want to really make sure that you get an eagle, you want to be on the green on the second shot. So I'm going to bring a big dog for the distance to get me past so that I can get over here on the other side. Now, if you've got a lower developed big dog, you know, it may not have enough stuff to woe you up to get to the hole. But what a big dog does have, the one thing a big dog's missing is ball guide. Other than that, your big dog's got lots of good stats. And one of the things it has very early on is curl. So what you can do is you can start up here and hit this rough. And it's like doing a rough bump, but what you're going to do is you're going to apply maximum side spin, maximum curl. So when you hit the rough, you've got your maximum side spin and maximum curl, and you're trying to dribble it out of the rough and get it to come back down towards the green. And it's a real steep hill going down here. So if you can hit this, you've got those, you know, you're using that side spin and that curl, you can get it to come back down towards the hole. Now there is an out of bounds here. You can see this is the first cut of the rough, second cut of the rough, third cut of the rough, and this is out of bounds. So sometimes you can be up here from the second shot. What you can do is you can start up higher, and you can get up here. I've hit my ball up here to see if I could blast through these trees. I've hit on this little thing right here and see if I could bounce it over, because it's shorter from here to here. This shot's shorter than trying to come out to here. It's just a little bit shorter, but sometimes you get here if you've got headwind and one-on-one. So I practiced this and tried to see if I could do it, and it's difficult. You don't want to have to do that, especially in the tournament. What you want to do is bring the right stuff. So bring a big ball, 3-power ball. I'm going to bring my big dog, and I'm going to see what kind of distance I can get. Now, if I can get this shot, this drive shot, so that I'm up on this plateau, I'm up by that shadow, and I can work out the topspin number. When I get here, that's going to give me a lot of information as far as like what I'm looking at on the other side. What I'd really like is for my ball guide to actually, my red line to be right here so that I'm right there, you know. If that's the case with my big dog, it hits at 180. And, you know, if you've got a guardian, you know, especially if you've got a higher developed guardian, it's in the 170. So you could probably get the same kind of red line look up here with the guardian, but it has backspin. So we're trying to stop the ball in a very short area here to get it to come to the green, and that backspin can serve us well in that spot. So my goal on Monday is to, number one, figure out what kind of topspin I can use in order to get to this spot. What am I going to have to do to get as far up here as possible but not take any chance of getting in the rough? And number two, what is the best club to bring on this second shot? I'm going to start off with a big dog because it's got the distance and it's got good stuff. But if I find that, hey, when I'm way up here, I could actually bring my sniper or I could bring my guardian, then I may switch. Now, if you're inconsistent on this shot and you're not achieving the end goal down here, then you're almost always going to want to bring your biggest wood that you have in your bag. So that's hole number 3. So let's go to hole number 4. This is a par 3. And this is one of the few par 3s in the game that we're actually going to use a short iron in rookie. And the thing I don't like about this hole is that the hole is so deep down here that you can't zoom way down in on your ball guide when you're making the wind adjustment. And it takes very little wind adjustment. And really, I want to either be right on the cup or I want to be somewhere in this area in front. And the reason I want to be there is because if you roll off the back, it's very easy to roll off the back And it's a very long, difficult putt from back here because the cup is on the top of the hill, and then you've rolled off the back, and now you can actually see the cup. So even if you're on the fringe down here doing a chip-in shot, it's a difficult shot. So it's better to be in front and short and make your putt and go the heck home. But this hole has a great hole-in-one opportunity. I've hit a lot of hole-in-ones on this hole, and there is a great opportunity, but it takes very little adjustment, and I would definitely bring my most accurate short iron when you're on this hole. If you come here and some people go, well, hey, I can bring a club and try and backspin it. There's a hill in the front as well. The hole's kind of like right at the peak. There's a little flat area up here, and then it's all downhill, and it's all downhill. So if you bring something and you go, well, hey, I'm going to start on the other side of the sand, which is what I normally do on a hole. If you watch my videos, I'm really big about taking traps out on these par 3s. So normally I would try and get in front of that trap. The problem here is that if you miss the shot and you're short, you could end up rolling all the way back down on the front and end up either in the rough or in the sand. So this is definitely a hole I'll work on as the week goes on to find out exactly what the wind adjustment, or not wind adjustment, but the top spin, back spin adjustment, and it'll all depend on which kind of wind we have. So if we have a headwind, we'll probably have to put on a little bit of top spin. If we have a tailwind, we may not have to make very much of an adjustment at all. But this will definitely be a hole to work on as the week goes on, but it's going to be a short iron. And I'm going to start it with a Marlin, with a 0 power ball, and see where I'm at. I play this a lot in one-on-one. I've gotten this hole a lot over the years, and I've played it I don't know how many times with the Marlin, and I don't know that I need to bring anything better than that. Hole number 5. We've got a par 5 here, and this is one of the White Cliff holes, and I'm going to use a QB, a Kingmaker. I'm going to do no more than 3 top spin and maximum left-hand side spin on the drive. And then I'm going to come at it with a sniper, and I'm going to use 1 per ring on the sniper. And I found on this hole that you want to go straight at the hole and do just a regular wind adjustment, 1 per ring. I haven't added, and I've made several albatrosses on this hole just going straight at it. I mean, you want to really look down here and zoom in and look at your ball guide and make sure that that ball tip is going right in it, and don't be long on this hole. So when your ball guy comes in, this is a long sniper shot where you're having to apply head or top spin in order to get up here. You want to make sure that your ball guide is ending like right at the hole. You don't want to be long, because this is one of those courses that it's fringe, little teeny bit of fairway, and then you're in the rough. So if you overshoot it, it drops down. Once you get past the hole, it starts to drop down, and it's very easy to get in this rough, and you don't want to have to you don't want to have to try and recover your eagle shot from doing a rough shot. So I'm going to come at it from the island here with a QB. My red line's going to be somewhere in here, and I'm going to do 3 top spin to get me to come out into this area. I will be applying not so much where I'm applying curl to the left, but I'm going to be at least rubbing up against the nubs and making sure that when it bounces the very first time, that little teeny bit of curl that I put on it engages, and make sure that the ball stays to the left, because it does want to drift off a little bit to the right here. But my goal is to get out into this tip so that I have that sniper shot going for Albie. This is a great albatross shot. Now there is a shot from the other side, but that shot right there, this second shot, you really have to bring the right club for this. If you're bouncing over, you've got to make seriously good wind adjustments. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the rough or the sand. And if you're coming over the other side, you're probably going to need a backspin club. So you have to bring your clubs accordingly if you're going to do this shot out here. But this shot right here is a QB, 100% accurate club, Titan, and a 100% accurate club going towards the hole, going for Albie. Nothing in your way. So I'm definitely going to be coming out to the island. Hole number 6. This is a par 4, and I'm going to be using an extra mile and a Titan, and I'm going to be trying to bounce off of this and land right here in the front. Now if you've got lesser developed clubs, don't worry about this shot. Come out into this area, you can use a QB, put on your maximum top spin, and end up anywhere out in this area right here. And you'll end up with whatever club you have, you'll end up being in a very consistent spot. And I would definitely encourage you to use a more accurate driver. If you're going to come to this side over here, I would bring a QB as opposed to an extra mile, because with the extra mile you're going to get a lot more inconsistency. One time you came out here and you hit it perfect. Next time you came out here and you hit it great. Next time you're great to the left. Next time, for whatever reason, it got a little bit of roll. It hits one of these moguls out here and it got a little bit of roll and it up here. But if you bring your QB, you're going to find yourself being in a very similar spot over and over. You're going to be in this target area as opposed to this target area. And it's always better to tighten up your target area, because the deal there is that this next shot you're practicing and you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Now, if you look at how the green is here, here's the pin and here's the mouth. Draw that line out. Anything on this line, that's really my target zone. So if you find yourself out here, when you come into the green, you've just made it so that you have to start here. It's harder to woe the ball up to get it to go in. So being farther on this is not the goal. Being in a spot that opens up this mouth so that we have a great shot for eagle here, that's the goal. So I would encourage you to be somewhere on this line. Be very specific when you're doing these drive shots. I see people all the time, they throw it out there. We are trying to throw it out there, but we want to throw it out there to the same spot we were in last time. And we want to make sure that we're in the optimal spot. So if you find yourself out here, just take off a little bit of topspin. If you find yourself out here, you need to add a little bit of topspin, or you need to jump up to a bigger ball so that you can get somewhere on that line when you're playing this hole. And you're going to be out here with a short iron shot, so really know your short iron numbers. And everybody's going to play with their numbers however they play them on their clubs, but really know the numbers. Write them down on your cheat sheet so you don't have to think about it. You can look at when you set up the hole and go, hey, I've got a Hornet, and it's going to be 1.1, 1.9, 2.2. That's what I play on my Hornet. Those are my numbers. Maybe you like my numbers, and maybe you like Golf Clash Notebook's numbers, and maybe you like somebody else's numbers, or maybe you like whatever numbers you've come up with. But whatever numbers you use, make sure you write them down on your cheat sheet. If you're out here in front, why am I doing this shot? Because if you end up out here in front, and to do this shot, this is almost, this side right here is a guaranteed. You're on this line and you're taking a short iron, 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 over and over and over again. This shot out here is a little riskier because you're having to use an extra mile in order to achieve that distance, and you're having to use a bigger ball. You can do this one out here with any ball. You can use the Quasar, anything, Navigator, any ball you want. It's probably more than likely out here you're going to want to bring a Katana or a little bit bigger ball so that you can make sure you get this distance, and something that's got a little bit better wind so that it'll knock the wind down a little bit. Out here, you're taking that extra mile. You hit it great to the left. You're going towards this sand trap. You hit it great to the right. You're out in the clear. So a perfect and a great to the right are going to put you in a pretty good spot, and a great to the left could end up putting you in a bad situation. But if you can get out here in front, you've got a wedge shot coming in, and a wedge shot going in for eagle is a thing of beauty. So that's why I'm doing this particular shot, because I want to end up out in this target area. And I want to definitely, this is one you really want to focus on hitting perfect, because you do not want to end up in the sand out here. It's not that you can't make that there. And these shots out here, you know how it works when you're this close to a pin. It all boils down to perfect. If you can hit that sand or that rough shot perfect, it's in the hole. And it's going to be perfect for the wedge. Any one of these shots is going to require a perfect shot, but your needle's going to be going a lot slower with a wedge than it's going to be going with your sand or your rough iron. So on that hole, extra mile, Titan, 10% wind adjustment. I've got my numbers for my Hornet and my numbers for my Rapier written down. If for some reason I do end up short out here, I clip the rough. Or if I come out here and I happen to be in my minimum short iron range, I want to have those numbers written down. All right, hole number 7. Hole number 7. This is one of the White Cliff holes. This hole right here. So I have a playlist up I put up a playlist for the Clifftop links, and I posted from the last tournament it was in, which was the South Coast tournament. Okay, so I posted a video from the South Coast tournament where we were using a rocket coming up above this area here and engaging all of the backspin in order to get the ball to go towards the hole. Now, if you look at where the tee box is, tee box here, coming over to the green, in order to get it to come back to the hole, it really requires a ball with some kind of side spin. So, or you're going to have to put some curl on it. Either you bring a ball that has a lot of side spin, and I was hitting this ball with this hole with a Marlin, but with a Santa ball or one of the low end balls that's got lots of side spin, if you have enough of those in your inventory, this might not be a bad hole, because it's hard to get it to come back without engaging curl. And anytime you put the word curl into a shot, you're definitely lowering your chances of making that, putting it in the hole. But this is definitely a holeable par 3. But it's also one of the more difficult ones. It's one of the only holes that I know in rookie that we can use a driver. And so I'm using that rocket because of the backspin. Now, I also posted another video. So that video is in the playlist for the Clifftop Links tournament, but I posted another video for this hole where I did the bounce over from here with a sniper. And I came at it and got a hole-in-one in the demo shot. And just so that you guys could take a look at it. The problem I don't like about the shot with the sniper is that the second bounce is right here in the narrowest part. And it's very easy to find yourself in the sand over here, especially to the left. Everything kind of wants to lean that way, but it's very narrow here. You can end up in the rough on either side or in the sand on either side with this shot if you're bouncing over, trying to bring it back to the hole, as opposed to getting in front of that stuff and using a rocket. So I'm going to be using a rocket this week. This is because the word curl was involved in this, it's definitely a lower percentage hole-in-one. It's not an easy hole to hole-in-one, but I'm going to come at it with clubs that I can get in front of this and keep working that shot. You can get a hole-in-one with your rocket. It's not that you can't get it. It's not like you're relegating yourself to just always a birdie. You can work the numbers and try and get that hole-in-one, but I'm definitely going to want to take this sand out of play. This tournament's tough, and you don't want to be dropping a shot on a par 3. You just do not want to be dropping shots on par 3. So get in front of that sand. Hole number 8. Okay, my goal is to get as far down into this area as I can possibly get, and I'm going to be bringing a QB. And you can do this shot. The thing is that you can do this shot with any. I was playing it in one-on-one, practicing some of the holes, and I got this hole several times with a Marlin. And so with a Marlin, my red lines, I was using a QB, and my red line somewhere back in this neighborhood, and so the ball guide's coming out here for the second bounce. So if you look at the arc, there's an arc out here. And so if I put on max, my goal when you're setting up a shot like this is to not mess around with, hey, I'm going to use 3/4 curl, or I'm going to use half curl. Figure out what your shot setup is for maximum curl. And it may be a thing of, if I'm using Quasar, I need to be right at the end of this sand out here, and I need to be 3 rings off, and then I adjust for the wind and I put on maximum curl, and I end up coming out into this area, so that you're in this area and you're in this area. If you're finding yourself up in the sand right here, either you're starting too far out, or you're not using a big enough side spin ball, or you're not applying all the curl. If you're finding yourself over curling it and you're down in this area, then what you want to do is, instead of being 2 rings off here, you want to be 3 rings off or 4 rings off, whatever it happens to be. So if you're coming here with an Apocalypse and you're putting on all of the curl on an Apocalypse and you're trying to get way up here in the front, it may not work that well, because if you get too far in front of where you need to curl, so my red line is going to be somewhere out in this area right here with a QB. And if you bring a bigger club, your red line may be out in this area. You're already in front of the spot that you need to curl. It's going to be hard to bring it out when you're that deep in the hole. So pulling it back. And if you're going to pull it back, and if it's a layup shot like that, why not bring the most accurate club in your bag by bringing a QB? So I'm going to come at this with a QB and a Saturn. A QB and a Kingmaker, and my goal is to end up down in this area. Now, the deeper you can get, the better, because then you open this up a little bit. But it's really hard to get all the way to the bottom. So you're more than likely going to end up somewhere up in this area. And when you come at it from this area, if we look at the green here, hold on, let me pan up on the green a little bit. If I'm out in this area, when I come at the pin, I'm coming at it. I got a fairly narrow neck here to come at it. So you're definitely going to want to bring a backspin club. So you're going to bring a Thorn. I've got a very high developed claw, and my claw is 75% accurate. Okay, as opposed to my thorn, which is like 51. So that means my thorn would be like 1.9 per ring, 2.0, somewhere in that neighborhood, and my claw is going to be 1.5. So I'm going to bring the more accurate club because all I'm looking for is the backspin. And a higher developed club is going to have more accuracy, and it's got enough backspin for us to get the job done. I'm also going to bring in my bag a Saturn as my backup, so that if I end up a little short back in this area and I end up being in my long iron range, I still can achieve the same shot because I've got a backspin. I've got a backspin long iron. This wouldn't be a bad hole, especially if you find yourself at all kind of flirting with the rough down here, to bring a machete. And if you're in the sand here, I'm not sure as far as distance wise, you know, whether or not a Houdini could actually make it from the sand here, because you'd probably, if you end up in the sand here, you're probably not going to be, you may not be able to make it over here. You may have to start up here and curl it and side spin it back down to the hole just so that you can recover and get on to the next hole. But this wouldn't be a bad hole to bring all of your backspin stuff. Bring a Houdini, bring a machete. So if you end up in the rough, you can still go for the same shot. You're just having a faster needle speed. It's going to require, anytime you're doing backspin, you never know. You know, we all know how it works. You've done backspin. You do normal shots, you don't hit perfect, it's not going to go in the hole. With backspin, you never know. I mean, you could hit it great to the left or the right and it still goes in the cup. So you still have a great shot here. Just make sure you bring the right clubs. I'm going to start the week off by going right at it. I'm going to put the back where it hits, and then where it does that bounce, and then we're expecting to draw it back to the hole. I'm going to put that spot where it's expecting to draw right back to the hole. I'm going to put that directly behind the cup and hope that it either goes in on the first bounce or it sucks it back in on the backspin. But I would encourage you, when you set your drives up here, to set your drive up so that when you come here, you're not trying to use a partial curl. You know, here's your bullseye, and you know, here's the needle moving back and forth, and you've got curl on it. I would do max curl all the way over, so that every time you come here, you can go, hey, I'm ending up here, I need to move the ball in a little bit, or hey, I'm ending up down here, I need to move the ball out a little bit, and so that you can adjust it. If you're finding that you're ending up here, what you're going to need to do actually is move the ball back. You're probably too deep in the hole, and so your curl's not getting enough, it doesn't have enough room to engage to get you back out into this area. So if you move the ball back just a little bit and you start your red line here, then you give yourself a little more room for that curl to engage. All right, that was hole number 8. Hole number 9. Okay, on my notes I've got extra mile, kingmaker, and a guardian. Now this is a dangerous hole. You can hit out here. The thing I don't like about hitting out here, and then if you're playing in the upper divisions, where you're playing from the second tees, this is a great shot. But when you come here, you want to make sure that you bring from this spot and this angle coming in, you've opened up this mouth so you have a little bit of a look at the green. You're going to need to bring a ball or a club like a sniper that's got some top spin, that has some maneuverability, that has some stuff on it, so that you can finesse it through this gap to get it up on the green. So this is a great shot, but when you're taking this shot, you are putting into play, this trap, and you're coming through a very narrow portion of the course in order to get up on the green. When you're playing in rookie, you can play out here, you can do the shot where you're trying to bring your ball out here, and you can play off the island, and I'm not a fan of playing off islands. I mean, I'm trying to take all this sand and stuff out of the play, and now you want me to hit off of an island? And an island that has a slope, I'm not interested in engaging this water. I'm trying to stay away from the water, not trying to hit over the water on an island after I got out here. My goal is to bring a big power ball, kingmaker, and end up in this spot right here. Because from here, with a guardian, your red line with a kingmaker is going to be somewhere in this neighborhood. And so you can set your ball up past the sand, past this narrow neck, and you can, put your ring. I like to center it so that I'm a couple rings away from that rough transition and a couple rings away from the sand and center it in that area, and then use backspin, side spin, and curl. Now, once again, anytime you use the word curl in a shot, you're definitely diminishing the chances that that's going to go in the hole. But the goal on this hole is to make sure you secure your eagle, and then if you get lucky and get an albie, then you get lucky and get an albie. The other way you can go at this is that you can try and weave and bob and get your first bounce here, your second bounce here, and you can drift through this and end up out in this area. You can also do a max overpower hook shot and try and end up out here, but you take a risk of ending up in the sand. Now, it's a pretty easy sand shot from here with any club to get on, so if you end up here in the sand, it's not the end of the world. I have seen people that have blown past and are able to get out into this area right here, but the deal is that you took a big risk that you're not going to, a big risk on a shot that you probably won't be able to replicate over and over and over. I'm going to just try and get out here, come out with my Guardian, and make my eagle. All right, that was the Clifftop links. Hopefully everybody has a great tournament tomorrow. Use Monday as practice round, and I will post some videos. Thanks for watching.